The Sun and Wayward Stars by ThBiButterfly. Chapter 9. Enemies to Lovers. Regulus opened the door the next morning and jumped back. Leaning against the doorframe, with no shirt, wet hair, and a rakish grin, stood Potter. Regulus's brow knit together. "Can I help you with something?" "No. Well, yes, but not right now," Potter teased, flexing his shoulders and smacking at him. "Go away, Potter," Regulus huffed, waving him off. "I'm not in the mood for your nonsense today." Potter leaned forward, his hands propped on his hips. "Feeling a bit off today, are you?" "Sure, Yoda, let's go with that," Regulus retorted, crossing his arms over his chest. He gestured vaguely at Potter. "Is there a reason for this display?" "Oh, I just got out of the shower," Potter answered. "Got up at dawn for Quidditch practice." Regulus pressed 2 fingers to his temple. "I think you've forgotten a step, Potter." "Not at all. I just wanted to return the favor," Potter replied. He stepped into Regulus's room and glanced around, his gaze sweeping the space. "The favor?" Regulus asked, blinking at him in confusion. "What are you on?" Potter smirked. "When you were high yesterday, you treated me with a topless show. I thought it was only fair I shared the same with you." Backing up a step, Regulus sat on the edge of the bed. "I did what?" "You decided to strip out of your shirt and lie on the grass," Potter answered with a shrug. "I'm not complaining, just evening the score." Regulus blinked violently. "Why?" "For your personal enjoyment," Potter answered smugly. He stepped closer and leaned forward, placing his hands on either side of Regulus's hips on the bed. "Do you enjoy it?" Concerned, Regulus held up his hands to keep Potter from getting closer, but was grateful not to actually touch him. He didn't understand why Potter felt this necessary. Just because he'd lost his head the day before, it didn't make sense. "This isn't necessary, Potter," Regulus huffed, avoiding both his bare chest and his eyes, opting for the much safer nest of curls on top of his head. "Just because I'm queer doesn't mean I want to see half-naked men all of the time." He assumed Sirius had already shared that bit of information. Remus said they never kept secret from each other. Already, Regulus regretted making the announcement to his brother, especially in the midst of an argument, but Sirius was so infuriatingly serious. It was also probably the biggest lie he told Potter so far, but the brat didn't need to know that. Regulus called on a superhuman level of strength to keep his hands elevated a few inches from his skin. The heat radiating off of him was entirely too tempting. He desperately wanted to touch him, but he knew that would expose far more than he already had to. Than he was ready to. Or would ever want to, where Potter was concerned anyway. "Oh, Regulus, you should know by now that I rarely do the necessary things, and much prefer the rest of it," Potter teased, the mischief glinting in his eyes. "You certainly did some unnecessary things yesterday, despite your insistence you rarely do." "I'm not responsible for anything done while impaired," Regulus refuted, shaking his head. Potter tilted his head to the side. "You weren't high when you flirted with Remus. Was that truly necessary?" "Yes, it was," Regulus replied immediately, lifting his chin in defiance. "He asked me to." "He asked you to?" Potter repeated, momentarily distracted. Some sort of realization seemed to wash over him. "Why?" Regulus shrugged, to see what Sirius would do. Confusion returned. What Sirius would do? Just Sirius? It was a thought experiment, nothing more, Regulus replied. A thought experiment? Regulus rolled his eyes. If you're just going to repeat everything I say, there's no point of this conversation, Potter. James, remember? Potter prompted. Not Potter. James. I do actually know your name, Regulus snarked, gaze falling to his eyes. Big mistake. The soft brown and gold glinted behind his glasses, providing Regulus's attention. Potter wrinkled up his nose. Then use it. I'd like you to call me James. I can't say I really care what you'd like, Regulus retorted, forcing an unaffected calm over his features. It was usually quite effective at ending conversations. You really are difficult, you know that, Potter sighed, eyes searching Regulus's face. He glanced down at Regulus's hands. Not as dangerous without your wand, though. Regulus scowled, his jaw tense. I can be, if you push me too far. Leaning further forward, Potter pressed his chest against Regulus's raised hands. How about now? Is this too far? He wrenched his hands away. What do you want, Potter? For you to admit you fancy me, Potter suggested, smirking at him. Why would I? Regulus cut his question short as fury bubbled inside of him. Oh, you'd like that, wouldn't you, Potter? Having power over me to use at your will? Well, piss off. That's never going to happen. Potter tilted his head to the side. What are you on about? I was taking the piss out of, Regulus interrupted him, shoving him hard. Just because I'm queer doesn't mean I fancy every bloke I meet. Least of all, an obnoxious asshole like you. Stepping back, Potter dropped his hands to his sides. That's not what I meant, Regulus. How dare you? Trying to use my sexuality against me has to be the lowest thing you've ever done, even for you. That's pretty pathetic. Regulus threw at him, hands flying. Fuck, I didn't mean it like that. I just wanted, Potter defended, holding up his hands in a calm gesture. Regulus clenched his teeth together. I am not a toy to be used and tossed aside when you're done playing. If you think for one moment that I'd allow some arrogant straight twat of a fool around my emotions, you've got another thing coming. I never said I was, Potter countered, dropping his hands off his hips. Fuck all the way off, Potter, Regulus snapped, shoving past him and leaving the room. He was furious, his hands gripped tight into fist. The mere thought of Potter expecting him to fall on his face just because the kid was attractive galled him to his core. As if he'd sacrifice his brother for someone so cocky and careless just because he's fit. The pure audacity was staggering. He nearly ran down the stairs, determined to put as much distance between himself and Potter as possible. Yesterday he'd allowed his guard to fall. That couldn't happen again. Not here, not with Potter, especially. Regulus would remain cool and aloof from here on out. Ignoring his body's reaction to blokes was a time-tested and well-practiced exercise for Regulus. Why should the situation be any different? He knew well that most blokes would find his interest repulsive, so he tempered down unless he was approached first. It was safer that way, both physically speaking and emotionally. He didn't make the first move. He couldn't be rejected. If he avoided blokes who actually caught his fancy, he couldn't get hurt when they left. It was as simple as that. James Potter did not fit into either category. He was just a straight prick with some sort of degradation kink. That was all it was. There was no chance he actually fancied Regulus. He simply wanted control over him. It was all an elaborate prank to him, and certainly not the first time he'd played with someone's emotions for fun. Evans could attest to that, he was sure. Potter wanted Sirius all to himself, and Regulus stood in the way. Just like Regulus distracted Sirius with Remus, Potter was trying to distract Regulus with himself. His mistake was thinking Regulus couldn't spot the game from the get. "Oi, Regulus, what's wrong?" Peter asked, appearing from the kitchen. "You look angry." "I am furious," Regulus snapped. He inhaled deeply and closed his eyes. Not at you. Not at you. "Peter, hold on." Regulus waved his hand as his flushed face tried to calm to his racing heart. "He's just so infuriating." Peter stepped forward and grabbed his shoulder. "Who? Sirius?" "No, Potter," Regulus corrected, ruffling a hand through his hair. "He's just lucky I don't have my wand. I'd have hexed him into oblivion." "James has you all stirred up?" Peter asked, his eyebrows furrowing sharply. "How? He's the most obnoxious, conceited, annoying prick I've ever met," Regulus finished for him. "If I was the violent sort, I'd have punched him in his daft grin." Peter tilted his head to the side, then glanced over at Regulus' shoulder with a sharp inhale of breath. "I wouldn't if I were you, mate." Regulus' spine straightened immediately, but he refused to turn around. Eyes flicked over his friend. Peter arched an eyebrow. "I'd also suggest a cold shower." Behind him, Potter let out a frustrated groan. "It's not my fault. He keeps..." "Now, actually," Peter continued, nodding intently towards the stairs. "You are in no condition to continue this row, and neither is he." Potter grumbled under his breath as he stomped back up the stairs. 2 showers in one bloody morning. Fuck me. "Keep walking around half naked and I'll consider it," Sirius chorused teasingly, his voice echoing down the stairs. "Looking rather fit today, James. Was it for my benefit?" Peter snorted a laugh. "See, they flirt constantly." He sobered quickly. "Oh, fuck," he flipped Sirius off. "That won't go over well." "What was that for? Get back here," Sirius shouted, his steps pounding on the stairs as he chased after Potter. Regulus huffed in frustration, rubbing the space between his eyebrows firmly. This entire trip to the Potters was going downhill fast. He'd wanted to spend more time with Sirius, show him that he could be the brother he needed, the only brother he needed at that. Instead, he was caught up in awkward mess with the one person he'd intended to avoid. His hand sliding down to hold Regulus's elbows, Peter studied his face. "Why are you arguing with James anyway? Clearly you're both stirred up from it. So what happened?" "Is that his reaction to every altercation? Getting aroused?" Regulus asked, then immediately regretted it. "Never mind, I don't want to know." No, actually," Peter answered anyway. He squeezed Regulus' elbows. "Usually only when it's someone he fancies." Regulus' head snapped up. "That's not true. It happened just now, and he does not fancy me." He shook his head and rolled his eyes. "Probably did it on purpose just to fluster me, the prick." "You think James popped a woody during a row just to fluster you?" Peter checked, disbelief evident on his face. "That's quite a reach, mate." He gets rather embarrassed by it, actually. "He knows I'm queer now. I wouldn't put it past him to use that to his advantage," Regulus accused, glancing over his shoulder. "If he dares to say anything at school," Peter scoffed. "He wouldn't out you like that. I know he can be a bit much sometimes, but James is a good person, Regulus." "All of you keep defending him. I know you're his friends, but he's acting like a Class A prat," Regulus insisted, pulling free from Peter's grasp. "He can't possibly deserve your loyalty." That and far more," Peter refuted, shaking his head. "It's just, he gets a bit overconfident with people he wants to impress and becomes across as..." Arrogant, obnoxious, annoying, Regulus offered. A slow smile slipped across Peter's lips. Well, yeah, I reckon that about covers it. He pushed the fringe back from his face. Look, Regulus, he's not like that really. It's a facade. James is, I don't care what he's like, Regulus denied, crossing his arms over his chest. I'm not here to see him. I'm here to spend time with my brother. Tolerating Potter is just the price I'm paying to defend my relationship with Sirius. What do you mean? Peter asked, forehead wrinkling in confusion. Why do you need to defend your relationship with Sirius? He loves you. Regulus sighed heavily, annoyed with himself for exposing so much. He's drifted away from me ever since he left home. I just want him back. And James is in the way of that? Peter guessed, nodding in understanding. To some extent, yes, Regulus admitted. Sirius and I were close once, but now he turns to Potter instead. Peter hummed thoughtfully. Sirius is capable of more than one thing at a time, though. He can be best mates with James and be your brother. Right, but I'm the one he should be relying on. I'm his actual brother, not Potter. Well, you have a point, but I still don't think the two have to be mutually exclusive, Peter replied, shrugging his shoulders. Surely you have friends you're close with. Peter huffed. Not that I've replaced him with. Recognition washed over Peter's face. You think Sirius is replacing you with James? He already did. I just want him back. That conceited twat isn't nearly good enough for Sirius, and I'll be damned if he's going to take my place. Regulus snapped, eyes flashing with anger. Peter chewed the inside of his cheek. I don't think that's what's happening, though. Sirius talks about you fairly often. He's proud of you for refusing to marry the Parkinson girl. He was crowing about it for a solid week. Regulus deflated. He is? He did? He said you were braver than he gave you credit for, Peter explained. I think he hoped that it was a sign that you'd leave them entirely, stay with him from now on so he can protect you again. He did protect me, Regulus murmured, his heart clenching tight in his chest. Peter smiled, reaching out to tip Regulus's chin up. He still is. Haven't you seen it? Sirius hasn't replaced you, Regulus. He simply built his own family, and he wants you in it. Even if that's true, he's added Potter to it as well. Sorry. Regulus objected, crossing his arms over his chest defensively. I don't want to be a family with Potter. I'm afraid that's your choice to make, Peter said solemnly. If you want Sirius back, James comes along with him. The two of them are inseparable. Regulus's eyes locked in onto Peter's. You believe that, don't you? That they're inseparable? Only because it's true, Peter agreed, shrugging lightly. It's not fair to expect Sirius to choose between you, Regulus. James was there for him during some really tough times. Pulled him out of depression and tantrums repeatedly, despite his protest. He can reach Sirius when no one else can. Do you really want to take him that away from your brother? Yes, Regulus answered petulantly. Peter snorted a laugh. Piss off, Regulus. Now who's the prat? Still Potter. You're trying awfully hard to hate him, aren't you? Peter nodded, narrowing his eyes at Regulus. Why is that? Regulus shrugged. It's not that hard. Every time he opens his mouth, he gives me plenty of reasons. He's fit, though, Peter pointed out. Surely you can acknowledge that. I'm not even sure I have a preference, but James is a whole sexuality by himself. Not the point, Regulus refuted, shaking his head. There are lots of fit blokes. That doesn't make him special, Peter. Look at Remus. He's just as fit, and he's clever. Brilliant, even. You don't fancy Remus, though, do you? Peter checked, eyebrows soaring up his forehead. Regulus scowled. I wish I did. He'd be a good match for me. reasonable anyway. That's not how it works, and you know it. Opposite attracts, Peter insisted. He nudged Regulus's arms. I would definitely say you and James are opposite. He wears every emotion he feels like a badge of honor, and is fairly open to anything. You, on the other hand, are guarded and cautious. Your temper is fierce, but you control it most of the time. Enemies tend to be opposites too, Regulus shot back. Seems far more fitting in this scenario. Only if it's enemies to lovers, Peter teased, a wild smile slipping across his face. After these revelations, that's what I'm rooting for, I have to admit. Regulus's expression went blank. Keep these revelations to yourself, Peter. There's not a chance in hell of that happening. He'd have to grow a whole new personality. We'll see, Peter hummed, shrugging lightly. I think you just need to see his personality. This isn't it. You're all delusional. Hello. I hope you enjoyed this video. James is a special being with his confidence. I could honestly never. And Regulus is just being so oblivious to his own emotions. It's so fucking funny. And I really, really love the way Peter is written in this fic. Very many fics he's not written that great, which, I mean, partly understandable, but still, he was a part of their group for a reason. And honestly, in AU fics, I love him. So just there. And I really like him in this fic, and how this author writes him in multiple fics, not every one of them, but in multiple fics, is really, I really like it. But especially in this one. Yeah, and it's honestly very funny. Just only if it's enemies to lovers. Oh well, Peter, you hit it right on the nail. Honestly, love it. I hope you like this. I hope you have had and will have a nice day. And I'm going to shut up now.